everyone, welcome back to the Stitches and Scribbles podcast. My name is Erin, and I just wanted to kind of take a chance this week to catch up with you since I took a week off last week. I don't have a ton of crafty stuff to show you just because of how busy I was, so I figured I would make this more of a chatty podcast. So I mentioned this in the previous episode of the podcast, but I had a bachelorette weekend that I was attending, and that's where I was last weekend. The timing of everything was kind of funny because I had a craft fair Wednesday of, no, is it 2 weeks ago now? Yeah, 2 weeks ago now. So what, I don't even know what day it is today. Okay, so I had a vendor event on May 3rd, which was almost 2 weeks ago now. It'll be 2 weeks ago when this video is out. It went super well. I actually vlogged some of my process in creating items for that craft fair, and you'll see that vlog this coming Friday. It was an awesome event. It was actually at my chiropractor's office, but they invited all of their patients or practice members who had small businesses to come in and set up a table during their open house. So I sold lots of plushies and had lots of fun at that event, but I had to immediately turn around and finish packing because I left Thursday afternoon for this bachelorette weekend. And the weekend was super fun. I met lots of really nice women who were on this trip with us. It was for one of my childhood friends. I've mentioned that a bunch of times in the podcast at this point, from the bridal shower preparations to getting ready for the wedding itself and all that stuff. But because she's one of my childhood friends, I did not know the other women who were going. So it was really nice to meet new people and hang out. We did some wine tours, lots of we even just had a low-key movie night one night. So it was definitely a really fun experience, but it left me kind of, I guess, I don't want to use the term burned out, but socially depleted. We'll use that word. I got home on Monday night. I had Tuesday to kind of reset and relax. And then I immediately went into 3 back-to-back days of subbing. So I subbed, what would that have been? The 10th, the 11th, and the 12th of May. And now we're filming today on the 15th. So once I got back from the bachelorette trip, even though I did have enough time to film a podcast that Tuesday and have it uploaded for Wednesday, I knew that A, I wasn't going to have any crafts to show you because I was gone all weekend. And B, I didn't want to kind of spend that energy knowing that I was going to have the next 3 days of being very socially on, if that makes sense. This is kind of, I think I've talked about this before, but one of the things that they don't really talk about with a teaching career is just how much mental energy goes into being, having a certain personality all day, but also it's a full day of performing in a certain extent. So it's kind of an odd feeling at the end of the day to be so socially tired, if that makes any sense. I'm sure that people who are in customer service or client or client facing positions experience the same thing. I do think it's a little bit different when your clients are kids because you also can't speak as your normal adult self. There's a certain amount of filtering that you have to do, and you word things differently, and it's a lot of very quick problem solving of how do we get this kindergartner to stop crying? How do we get these middle school kids to stop doing whatever it is that they're doing? So because I knew I was going to have those 3 days in a row of subbing, I chose to take Tuesday kind of as a personal day, just so that I could kind of rest and prepare myself for the rest of the week. And then I actually had the video that's coming out this Friday, like 90% filmed last week, except for the outro. But I forgot about it on Tuesday, and actually filming the outro would have been really fast. I totally could have done that. But I forgot about it, and then Wednesday, Thursday, I just did not have the energy, both for the filming and the editing that would need to go into getting the video up on time. So I just chose to forgo Friday's video as well, so you'll see it this week. So yeah, I preach to friends all the time how important it is to like take time for yourself and let yourself rest. And I think sometimes I forget to do that, or I think that like I have to have videos out every week, even though I've had several different filming schedules over the course of this channel, and my channel's still continuing to grow. So I had to kind of convince myself that taking a week off would not be absolutely detrimental to the life of my YouTube community. So I'm glad that I did take a week off to make sure I had that time to rest, relax, and reset. But now I'm kind of ready to like jump back into some things this week. I have another busy day of subbing, but I have Monday and Tuesday off again. So I'm going to try to do some like filming and projects today and tomorrow so that I can sub the rest of the week. But after that, I've only got 1 or 2 sub days left before the end of the school year, and I knew in advance that May was going to be a busy month for subbing, just because it's the start of wedding season. So I already know that I have now covered a teacher who is attending a wedding. I think there's one other teacher where I'm covering either a wedding or a trip that she's taking of some sort. So that's like May and, well, actually, I don't know. What is the busiest season for subbing? I think May is always the busiest. In the last 2 years I've done this, but the first year was a little hard to qualify because I didn't start till October. I also noticed that like the few days before and the few days after a scheduled break, I usually get called in for somebody who's either like has to start a trip early because of flights or has to extend it because of flights or something like that. I really don't get called a lot like right at the beginning of the school year or right at the end of the school year. So even though the school that I work with goes, I don't know if it's a full week or like a week and a half into June, I don't have any days scheduled for June this year, nor did I have any definitely for like that last week of August when they start, but I don't think I had very many for September either. I'm actually going to look because now I'm curious, but I don't, oh, that would have been in my previous journal. Can't check it anyway, but I don't think I had that many in September either. So yeah, it definitely speeds up kind of around holidays and then at the end of the school year, but not like right at the very end. So that's kind of just what's been going on in my life lately. And I'm really excited for the summer season to start, even though like obviously I love being a substitute teacher, otherwise I wouldn't continue to do it. It does free up a lot of time to suddenly not have subbing as part of my schedule. So I'm really hoping that over the summer I can even like pre-film videos and have like, it would even be awesome if I could get like one pre-filmed for each month for like probably not the whole school year, but as far as I can, so that I know I have at least one like rest week a month where I don't have to do a video, but we'll see how that goes. I always start stuff like that with the best of intentions, and then usually somewhere along the line it falls apart. But yeah, definitely excited for the warmer weather. I'm really hoping that today, if I like get the things done that I want to, I can take some of my crochet outside, both as part of a video and just to, you know, absorb the sunlight for a little while, and also water my plants because I need to do that. But I'm excited for the weather changing. I think I've said that like 3 times now. And just to have a little bit more flexibility for the summer months in terms of like when I can film, because I don't have to plan around teaching. But I think I'll go ahead and dive into my whips. I do not have any finished objects for you this week. You will get to see a whole bunch of finished objects in my vlog on Friday because they were kind of rapid fire things that I was churning out. But I don't want to like show them all twice, so I'll just save those for Friday's vlog. It was a lot of plushies, some new patterns, some old patterns that I've used, just in preparation for that open house that I was doing. But I do have a couple projects that I have worked on over the past week. They kind of fall in the category of like something I already had started, something I need to work on, and something that I started as a break just for fun. So the ongoing project that has been an ongoing project for a while, and the hook fell out, so I'm going to have to be very careful with this. But this is the shawl that I'm making for my friend's mom, the same friend with the bachelorette party. This is a fiber spider pattern. I believe it was called like Diamonds and Blocks or something like that. It makes almost an argyle pattern where it's got the little like X's in between the like kind of granny square-ish blocks. And I am crocheting this with 2 yarns held together. One of them is the soft alpaca lace from Hobie in, I think the color was just called navy. It's color number 21. I've said this a bunch of times, and I'm also using their glitter strand in gold. I really need to start plugging in some hours on this project. This is the stitch marker I put in at the beginning of the week, so probably Tuesday when I got home. Yeah, beginning of last week. So Tuesday when I got home from the bachelorette party, I put in the stitch marker to see how much I could do in a week. And this is a pretty significant amount, especially considering that the rows keep getting longer and longer. I know I made a similar shawl for my friend who is the one getting married. I did hers in ivory and silver, and hers took just over 2 skeins of the alpaca lace, so I'm planning on using the same amount for this one, and I'm almost done with the first skein, so I'm really going to have to crank it out because I think my mom wants to deliver it next weekend. Ooh, that's going to be tight. I'm really going to have to put some hours in on that. It'll be fine. I'll get through it. That'll just be my couch project and my backpack project for the next week and a half, 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks. I can do that. I think that's doable. We'll see. Yeah, that's what I'm going to have to do because the wedding is June 3rd and we wanted it delivered before the wedding. So I'm really going to have to crank that out. That might be part of my outdoor crocheting session today. Actually, even like I could just dedicate all of tomorrow to just crocheting and making it a low filming day. I don't know if this is even remotely interesting for those watching the podcast, that I'm like kind of now trying to plan my week as I'm talking to you, but sometimes that's just how it goes. But I really want to take advantage of the nice weather. I do have a possible beer garden trip planned for Friday after school with some of my former coworkers, so I might even take this to that as well. Yeah, I'm trying not to go into panic mode now that I've just kind of done the math on that project and seeing how much I have to get done in the next slightly less than 2 weeks. Oh boy, it's going to be interesting. It's okay. It's okay. I only sub 2 days next week. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. It'll be all good. Okay, we're going to move on so that I stop panicking about this project and then can like work on it, you know? So the other project, this one did actually go with me to the bachelorette weekend, but you've definitely seen it before. It's my birthday scarf. I did a dedicated vlog to this when I started it. You can see my stitch marker. I worked on it on the way to the bachelorette weekend in the car. We drove... How far did we drive? So I live in the Milwaukee area, carpooled with one of the friends of the bride who was going to the bachelorette weekend, who lives kind of in the area as well. We drove down to Illinois so that because more people lived in Illinois. So we drove down to Illinois, like still within the Chicago area. And then Friday morning started our drive up to Traverse City, Michigan. So it was, I think, close to a 6-hour drive from that spot in Illinois. We stopped for lunch halfway-ish, or slightly more than halfway. And on the first leg of the trip, I was driving with the bride and the maid of honor and sitting in the back, so I did work on this while we were chatting and talking about the weekend and other stuff and everything. But I did bring it out while we were watching a movie during the weekend. So I probably in total through the whole weekend spent maybe 6.5 hours on it. Maybe less than that, maybe closer to 5 hours, because I know I didn't knit the entirety of the car trip, like start to finish. Like, it took me a while to get it out. I was also the snack manager, at least for the back seat, and was kind of handing them stuff or like checking to see if we had things in the back. And I tend to not knit if we're not on the highway, so there was definitely some like wait time of like getting off the highway where I'd stopped knitting and getting back on. So it was probably closer to like 5 hours of knitting that I did total on that trip. And then I ended up not knitting at all on the way back because I drove with the one bachelorette party member who lives close to me, and we ended up just talking the whole like 7 hours back. So did not do as much knitting as I thought I was going to do, but I had so much fun that I was fine with that. I am approaching being done with this soon. I've got like less than half of a skein left from the original yarn. And after that, I will just graft it together and it'll be an infinity scarf. But I love how all the stripes are kind of paired up together. I think this is going to be really fun once it's done. I'm excited to have it. I had brought some extra yarn with me because it was one of those trips where I knew what the schedule was. I knew everything that we were doing, but there were quite a few things where I wasn't sure how long it was going to take. I also wasn't sure if, because I have kind of an odd sleep schedule, I tend to wake up really early. So I wasn't sure if there was going to be some time where like I was up by myself and needed something to do, but that didn't really end up happening. I think the rest of the group were also fairly early risers, and we did stay up pretty late, which prevented me from getting up too early for anything. So yeah, not as much knitting time as I thought I was going to have, which is why I brought the some extra yarn with me so I could start a new project if I needed to. I also did not bring that crochet shawl on the trip because I can't crochet in the car. I have to like visually focus on it too much versus knitting in stockinette. I can just go and not really have to look at it. So crochet projects tend to make me more car sick than knitting projects do. Also, it's a dark yarn, and I knew that we were going to be in an Airbnb, but you know, for like watching movies with people, I don't want to have like a bright light on what I'm working. It's also very fine yarn. I didn't want to risk the gold filament snapping or anything like that. So I chose not to bring that on the trip with me, and brought the knitting project instead. So that probably meant that I lost a lot of time to work on that shawl because I was gone for 4 days. But that's okay. I'm very quickly approaching panicking about that project again. It'll be fine. I'll survive. The last project I have, I actually started when I got back. This is a basket that usually sits in my living room, and I put these 2 yarns in here kind of just for decoration. Our living room has a lot of like burnt orange and green tones in it, but I this weekend also kind of tried to make sure I took some time to chill and relax. So Saturday was mostly a relaxing day. And because Sunday we did Mother's Day down in Illinois with my mom's parents. So I spent a lot of Saturday working on that navy blue shawl. But I have this weird thing, and I don't know why it happens with crochet and not with knitting. Eventually with crochet, my hands will hurt, but it's not the hand holding the hook, it's the hand that like holds the work. I don't know if it's because of how I tension my yarn or if I'm just like pinching too hard, but I always end up with pain kind of right here if I crochet for too long. But I also can't figure out a way to hold or tension my yarn that makes that any better. So I kind of, if I'm working on a really long crochet project, I try to just plan in breaks, especially if I'm working on either something where the yarn is really, really tiny, or the super chunky yarn also kind of exacerbates that a little bit, which makes making plushies a little bit difficult. So normally during craft fair season, I try to only do one plushie a day if I'm trying to like increase my stock so that I don't hurt my hands. I also stop and do like hand massages and stretches and things like that to try to not cause any permanent damage. So if you have any tips or techniques about how you tension your yarn or things that have worked for you, if you also experience hand pain, I'd love to hear it. Usually the like recommendations for dealing with hand pain are for your dominant hand that's holding the hook. And I have the opposite problem where it's my non-dominant hand that needs help. So if you experience the same problem, I'd love to know what you do because I don't know how to fix that. But anyway, because I was working on that shawl and I kind of was feeling the like start-itis creeping in of just really wanting to start a new project, even though I really should not have. And also the birthday scarf was right next to me when I made this decision to start a new project instead. So I started a scarf kind of loosely inspired by the Sophie shawl, Sophie scarf thing that's been floating around. So a little backstory. I know that like everyone and their mother has made the Sophie scarf or the Sophie shawl at this point. I believe it's by Petite Knit, if I remember correctly. Now I can't remember. I just kind of assumed it was Petite Knit. But I remember looking that pattern up on Ravelry, looking at it, and I think it was like $8 US for the pattern. And this is no shade to the pattern designer at all. But I kind of looked at that pattern and went, I could definitely figure out how to make something similar without purchasing the pattern. And if the pattern was like $2 or $3, I would have just purchased it anyway. But it wasn't. It was $8. So I kind of looked at it and was trying to evaluate if the cost of the pattern outweighed the like mental effort I'd have to do to figure it out. But it wasn't that complicated. So the Sophie shawl does increases all the way to the center point of the shawl. I wanted to adapt mine to be a scarf, but not as thin and tiny as the Sophie scarf. Because the Sophie scarf, I always think of it as a flight attendant scarf. Don't know why that image is in my brain, but it like is meant to be like a little tiny kerchief tie, not like a winter scarf. So I wanted something in between the two designs of not quite as shawl-like as the Sophie shawl. I also didn't want it to have a point in the middle. So I did my increases for the first, like, little over a foot, I guess. And then I stopped increasing. And my plan is just to do this until I run out of yarn. Because it's self-striping, I can kind of estimate how many stripes I need to do my decreases at the end. But it's just garter stitch with a I-cord edging. I will not be doing any sort of tutorial on how to do this, just to get that out of the way, because I am kind of copying another person's design. So if you're interested and don't feel like figuring it out on your own, obviously go purchase the pattern. Like, that person deserves the recognition for designing the pattern in the first place. I just kind of felt like I was at a point where I could figure it out myself instead of purchasing the pattern, since it's a little bit pricier than what I usually spend on a pattern for something like a scarf. So that's kind of it for my things that I'm actively working on. I have a couple of other dormant works in progress right now, and I don't know if it was the last podcast or the podcast before where I talked about all of my like abandoned whips. So obviously I have a lot of projects to work on, finish up, all that good stuff, but those are the ones that I am most actively working on at the moment. So unfortunately that means that podcasts are not going to be super interesting the next couple of weeks because I really need to crank out that shawl. I'm even possibly debating taking a week off of the podcast again next week, because it feels kind of silly to film a whole like long form video to show you one project. So there's a chance that there will be a missing podcast again next weekend. I'll go ahead and apologize in advance if that's the case, but it's just kind of one of those months where there's not a whole lot going on in terms of like finishing projects. But I do still have some videos scheduled for Fridays over the next couple weeks, so those should come out as normal. But yeah, hopefully we get to a point over the summer where I have more stuff to show you on a weekly basis. I think I did a pretty good job, actually, the last couple weeks of making sure that there was still a podcast every week. In hindsight, I probably should have spaced those out a little bit more, but it is what it is. I definitely liked showing off my like knit and crochet library and all of my like random whips that are lying around, but that I am now out of backup podcast ideas. So if you have any suggestions, or if you want to see me talk about something specific in the podcast, leave those in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Eventually I'd love to do a Q&A, but I think I don't get quite enough engagement from my social media to have enough questions for a Q&A yet. But if you have questions, I'll start making a list now, and maybe do that in the future. But we're going to just end it there. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this podcast and other crafty videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on notifications so that you can be notified of all of my crafty content. I usually post podcasts on Wednesdays and other videos on Fridays. Those include vlogs, quiet craft with me's, tutorials, and whatever else I feel like doing that week. If you want to follow me on other social media, that information will be in the description box below as well. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone!